Chapter 1. The Call That Turned the Town Against Me. My own mother told 11 employers I was a thief, and for 18 months they believed her. She said I stole $25,000 from a family fund that never even existed, gaslit me into thinking I was unstable, and quietly let my career collapse. What she didn't know was that for 8 years, my aunt had been sending $600 a month in secret and had already built a $428,000 irrevocable trust with a defamation clause waiting for the day I found out. By August of 2024, we were sitting in mediation in Bibb County with 97 checks on the table, a civil lawsuit prepared for trial, and punitive damages on the line. The woman who called me a criminal signed a $112,000 settlement and a cease and desist in ink. My name is Maris, and this is how I used documentation to legally destroy the lie my family built. I was 36 years old the first time someone decided I was too dangerous to hire. It was March of 2021 in Knoxville, Tennessee, and I was sitting in a glass office at Appalachian Medical Logistics, trying not to let my hand shake. The fluorescent lights hummed above us. I had driven 40 minutes for the interview and rehearsed my answers about Medicare billing codes in the parking lot. For 6 years, I had worked as a compliance and billing specialist at Richway Health Supply. I earned $64,000 a year and handled vendor contracts, insurance reimbursements, and quarterly audits. I had never missed a deadline. I was the person managers trusted when numbers stopped making sense. Carol Jennings, the HR director, told me my background was exactly what they needed. She said experience like mine was rare. I let myself believe her. Halfway through the interview, her desk phone lit up. She glanced at the screen, hesitated, and picked up. She turned slightly away from me and lowered her voice. I could not hear everything, but I heard my name. There was a pause that stretched long enough to change the air in the room. When she hung up, her expression had shifted. "We have decided to move in a different direction," she said. I asked if something in my qualifications was lacking. She held my gaze. "We cannot take reputational risks right now." That phrase followed me for the next 8 months. By October of 2021, 11 employers across Knox County and the surrounding areas had either rejected me or quietly withdrawn interest after strong interviews. 11 conversations that began with confidence and ended with distance. One HR manager at a distribution company in Maryville calls me back after turning me down. "We received a call," he said. "The caller identified herself as your mother. She said you stole $25,000 from your own family." The words landed heavier than I expected. "Is there any documentation?" I asked. "No," he said. "We cannot verify it, but we cannot ignore it either." That was the moment it stopped feeling like a rumor. It was a false accusation. It was career sabotage by my own mother. The caller was Evelyn Alderidge, 64 years old, part-time administrative assistant at Grace Fellowship Church. In Knoxville, that meant something. Church members owned businesses. They served on boards. They trusted one another. Within weeks, my name was attached to a story I could not outrun. There was no family emergency fund. There was no missing $25,000. My father had died in 2015 from a heart attack while mowing our yard. After that, my mother handled the household finances. I never questioned it. I called her that night. "Why are you telling employers I stole money?" I asked. Her voice was calm. "I never said you stole. I said there were concerns about responsibility." "Concerns about what?" "About character. Employers deserve to know who they are hiring." There was no proof. Just implication. Between March and October of 2021, I applied to 34 positions. 11 turned into interviews. Each time the meeting felt promising until something shifted behind the scenes. "We cannot take reputational risks. We need someone without complications. This is not the right fit." In January of 2022, my landlord asked me into his office behind the leasing desk. "I have decided not to renew your lease," he said. "I need tenants who do not bring drama." Drama. I asked what he meant. He avoided my eyes. "I have heard things." That was when the damage moved beyond my resume. It touched where I lived. At Grace Fellowship, I was invited to meet with a small committee to discuss concerns. The tone was gentle, almost pastoral, but the message was clear. Something was wrong with me. My younger sister Tessa sent a message that same week. "I don't understand why you are hurting Mom this way. You have embarrassed her." I stared at the screen before typing back, "I'm not doing anything." She never responded. In a town like Knoxville, reputation travels faster than facts. A whisper can outrun documentation. Once someone frames you as dishonest, you carry the burden of proving otherwise. At that point, I didn't even know the legal word defamation. I only knew a lie was spreading, and it was costing me interviews, stability, and sleep. I started keeping records. Dates of interviews, company names, the timing of rejection emails that arrived within hours of promising meetings. March, April, May. The pattern sharpened. 11 interviews in 8 months. 11 calls. The same accusation repeated. $25,000. Family emergency fund. Concerns about character. I had spent my entire adult life trying to be the responsible daughter. I paid my bills. I supported my mother after my father died. I built a stable career. Yet somehow I had become the warning story. My savings began to shrink. I took temporary billing contracts for small practices that did not run full background checks. Short-term work, no benefits, no security. The deeper damage was social. At the grocery store, I felt conversations pause as I passed. At church, I noticed empty seats beside me. Neighbors who once waved now looked away. Someone had made me radioactive. One evening in October 2022, I sat at my kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and wrote down every interview that had collapsed. I traced the dates with my finger. It was too precise to be coincidence. This was not concern. It was control. And what I didn't understand then, what I would only uncover later, was that this campaign had not started in 2021. It began in 2010, with money that was never meant to disappear and a betrayal my mother believed would stay buried forever. Chapter 2. The money that was never mine. I did not expect to find the truth in a damp cardboard box behind a broken dehumidifier. It was October of 2022 when I drove back to my mother's house in Knoxville to collect a few documents I had left in the garage. She told me she would be at a church luncheon and said I could let myself in. Her tone was normal, casual. Nothing about it suggested I was walking into the center of something deliberate. The garage smelled like old paint and wet concrete. I moved a stack of plastic bins aside and saw a banker's box wedged behind the dehumidifier. My name was written across the lid in thick black marker. Not in my handwriting. I pulled it out and lifted the lid. Inside were stacks of photocopied checks clipped together in neat monthly bundles. The top check was dated January 2010, $600. The memo line read, "For Maris Aldridge Education Fund." My breath caught. I flipped to February, then March, April, May. Each month, $600. Each one made out to my mother's joint household account. Each memo line the same. I sat down on the cold concrete floor and counted. 12 checks for 2010, 12 for 2011, 12 for 2012. The pattern did not break. It continued cleanly through December of 2017. 96 checks, $600 each. $57,600. Tucked into the 2014 stack was one additional check for $1,200 with a short handwritten note, "For your graduation. Proud of you always." The handwriting was unmistakable. Claudia Mercer, my aunt, my father's older sister. According to my mother, Claudia had moved to Arizona years earlier and cut contact with us. That was the story I had repeated to friends without ever questioning it. I ran the numbers again in my head. 96 monthly checks plus the $1,200 graduation gift. $58,800 in documented transfers. This was not vague support. This was a structured fund, a paper trail, a money trail that could be traced month by month. I took photos of every check with my phone. Then I carried the box into the kitchen and set it on the table. When my mother came home an hour later, she stopped in the doorway. "What is that?" she asked. I turned the box toward her. $600 a month for 8 years from Aunt Claudia, from my education. Her expression hardened, not surprised, not ashamed, irritated. "That money went to the household," she said. "You lived here." "It was not addressed to the household. It was addressed to me." "You were not paying the mortgage at 22, she snapped. "That money kept this roof over your head." "You told me she moved away. You told me she wanted nothing to do with us." She exhaled sharply. "She made her choice. I did what I had to do." "Did she know you were taking it?" Silence. The kitchen clock ticked between us. "That money kept this house standing after your father died," she said finally. "Do you have any idea what the bills were?" "You could have told me," I said. "You could have said she was helping." "You would have run to her," she shot back. "You would have listened to her over me." There it was. It was not about survival. It was about control. "You let me believe she abandoned me," I said. She looked away. This was the real wound, not just the $58,800, not just the missing education fund. It was the narrative she had built around me. She turned generosity into abandonment. She turned support into silence, and she let me carry it. I spread the photocopies across my kitchen table that night, lining them up by year, 2010 through 2017. Clean documentation, consistent deposits, no gaps. If Claudia Mercer sent money that consistently, she believed it was reaching me, or she suspected it was not and kept records to protect herself. Either way, this was evidence, not rumor, not emotion, evidence. The same woman who had told employers I stole $25,000 had quietly taken $58,800 meant for my future. She had accused me of theft while diverting documented funds for 8 years. That was not a misunderstanding. That was betrayal with paperwork. I studied the final check again, the one with the handwritten note from 2014. "Proud of you always." She had written to me, not to my mother. If my aunt had reason to doubt that the money was reaching me, she would not have relied on trust alone. She would have prepared. She would have documented her investment. And as I sat there, surrounded by 97 pieces of proof, one thought cut through the anger. If Claudia Mercer suspected the money was not reaching me, she would have put something else in place. Chapter 3. The Trust Claudia Built. The bus ride back from Knoxville gave me too much time to think. If my aunt had documented 8 years of deposits, she had not done it blindly. She had built her career in commercial real estate in Savannah, closing multi-million-dollar deals with contracts thicker than phone books. She trusted signatures, not sentiment. If she suspected the money was not reaching me, she would have planned for it. Savannah greeted me with humid air and the slow rhythm of river traffic. Mercer and Langford Realty sat above a row of brick storefronts near River Street. The brass plaque beside the entrance read Mercer and Langford in clean, deliberate lettering. Inside, the receptionist looked up as I approached. "My name is Maris Aldridge," I said. "I believe Claudia Mercer was my aunt." She studied my face for a moment, then picked up the phone. A few minutes later, a woman in her early 60s stepped into the lobby. Her posture was straight, her expression composed. "I am Naomi Langford," she said. "Please come with me." Her office overlooked the Savannah River. Framed photographs lined the wall. In several of them, Claudia stood beside Naomi, both of them younger, confident, mid-handshake in front of buildings they had likely just purchased. "You said you are Claudia's niece?" Naomi began, once we were seated. "We have not met before." "No," I said. "I was told she moved away years ago." Naomi's gaze sharpened slightly. "Before I can give you anything, I need to confirm something," she said. "Claudia was cautious. She left instructions." She folded her hands. "When she was frustrated in negotiations, she used to repeat a phrase. Do you remember what it was?" "Paper does not lie," I answered immediately. Naomi's mouth curved in a small, knowing smile. "She said that constantly." She reached into a drawer and removed a large cream envelope sealed with wax. The seal had been broken once and resealed with care. "She left this in 2012, Naomi said, with specific instructions. If you ever came here on your own and could verify who you were, this envelope was to be placed directly in your hands." My pulse thudded in my ears as I broke the seal. Inside were legal documents stamped and notarized. The heading read, "Irrevocable Trust Agreement," dated June 2012, grantor Claudia Mercer, beneficiary Maris Aldridge, trustee Greg Holloway, Holloway and Pierce Law Firm, Savannah, Georgia. Initial funding $120,000. I looked up slowly. "She created a trust for me." "Yes," Naomi said. "A legally protected family trust fund, structured so it could not be altered or accessed by anyone else." "Why?" Naomi leaned back in her chair. "Claudia believed the monthly checks she sent might not be reaching you. She never confronted your mother directly. She suspected confrontation would escalate matters. Instead, she relied on estate planning." "Estate planning?" "She diversified the assets into indexed funds and municipal bonds, conservative growth, long-term protection." She slid a statement across the desk. "As of April 2024, the trust value is approximately $428,000. $428,000? The number did not feel real. For the first time in 3 years, my future was not dependent on my mother. "There is an additional clause you should read carefully," Naomi said. I scanned the next page. "In the event of documented defamation resulting in financial harm to the beneficiary, trust assets may be used to cover legal fees and related expenses." I felt the air shift. She anticipated this. Naomi nodded. "Claudia believed in quiet protection. She prepared safeguards for scenarios she hoped would never happen." The words defamation and documented harm pulsed on the page. My mother's voice echoed in my mind. Employers deserve to know what kind of person they are hiring. Claudia had known exactly what kind of protection I might need. "Did she ever ask about me?" I said. "Every year," Naomi replied. "She asked whether you had contacted us. She assumed you were busy building your life. She never spoke poorly of you." My throat tightened. My mother had told me Claudia walked away. Claudia had, in reality, structured an inheritance through a trust, anticipating financial control and potential manipulation. This was not an accident. It was foresight. "Greg Holloway can meet with you this afternoon if you would like," Naomi said. "He manages the trust and can walk you through your options." Options? For years, I had felt cornered. Now I was looking at a legally enforceable document designed to shield me from financial abuse. She didn't just protect my money, she protected my autonomy. Naomi studied me quietly. "Your aunt was strategic," she said. "She believed that women should never rely on verbal promises when documentation could provide security." I thought about the 97 checks spread across my kitchen table. I thought about the 11 employers who had quietly withdrawn interest after a phone call from my mother. I thought about the landlord who said he needed tenants without drama. Paper does not lie. Whispers do. I closed the folder gently. My mother had relied on implication, on character attacks, on social pressure. Claudia had relied on structure, on legal safeguards, on documented intention. The power dynamic had shifted, and my mother didn't know it yet. As I left Mercer and Langford Realty, the river breeze cut across the street and lifted the edge of the envelope in my hand. The city felt steady beneath my feet. I didn't feel rescued. I felt equipped. This was not a windfall. It was not a lucky discovery. It was an inheritance built with strategy, a trust fund structured to grow quietly until it was needed. For the first time in 3 years since that first interview collapsed in 2021, I was not reacting. I was preparing. I didn't want money for the sake of comfort. I didn't even want revenge for the sake of anger. I wanted the record corrected in ink, where no whisper could erase it. Chapter 4: Slander per se. By June of 2024, I was no longer reacting to damage. I was preparing a civil case. Lauren Whitfield's office sat 2 blocks from the courthouse in Macon, Georgia. Sunlight cut across her conference table in sharp lines. She listened without interrupting as I laid out the timeline from 2021 through the mediation request. When I finished, she folded her hands. "This is not just family conflict," she said. "Under Georgia law, an accusation of theft is slander per se." I let the term settle. "So I do not have to prove people thought less of me?" I asked. "You do not have to prove abstract harm to reputation," she replied. "We have to prove the statement was false and that it was communicated to third parties. That alone qualifies as a defamation claim." Defamation claim. Not drama, not misunderstanding, a civil lawsuit grounded in statute. I placed the documentation on the table. 97 photocopied checks showing $58,800 diverted from an education fund. Bank statements confirming the deposits. Email confirmations from 11 employers acknowledging they received calls from my mother warning them that I had stolen money. Lauren turned each page carefully. "This is documentation," she said, "and documentation wins." We ran the numbers. Before 2021, I earned $62,000 per year as a compliance specialist. For 18 months, I was either unemployed or underemployed. 18 months at $62,000 annualized is approximately $93,000 in gross income impact, Lauren calculated. That is measurable financial damage. She wrote it down in clear block letters. Original diverted funds, $58,800. Interest accrual, $93,000 lost income. Legal fees. And because the conduct appears intentional, she added, punitive damages could be considered if this goes to trial. Intentional harm. We filed a formal demand letter outlining financial damages, legal accountability, and a request for mediation in Bibb County before proceeding with the civil lawsuit. In August 2024, we sat in a neutral mediation room with beige walls and a long, polished table. The fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead. My mother sat across from me with her attorney, Richard Halpern. She wore a navy blazer and held her purse tightly in her lap. Lauren opened her binder and began placing evidence on the table in neat stacks. 97 checks, corresponding bank statements, printed email confirmations from 11 employers acknowledging the calls. Richard cleared his throat. "This is being framed as intentional defamation," he said. "My client was expressing parental concern." Lauren did not raise her voice. An allegation of theft is not parental concern. It is slander per se. We have documentation showing the statements were false and that they resulted in financial damages. I felt my hands tighten under the table as I remembered the first interview that dissolved mid-conversation. The phrase reputational risk echoed faintly in my mind. Richard leaned back in his chair. If this proceeds to trial, there is exposure to punitive damages, he said quietly to my mother. For the first time, she did not interrupt. Lauren turned toward me. We are prepared to proceed. However, we are open to settlement. After a brief recess, Richard returned. $130,000, he said, to resolve the matter. Lauren did not respond immediately. She looked at me. This compensates a portion of the documented financial damages, she said softly, but we can negotiate additional corrective terms. I looked across the table at my mother. I want letters sent to every employer you contacted. I want written corrections sent to the church board, and I want a formal cease and desist. Richard frowned. That is unnecessary. Lauren's voice remained steady. If defamatory statements are repeated, the matter may proceed directly to trial without further mediation. I felt something steady rise inside me. For 3 years, I had been painted as a thief. Now, the record would show who actually moved the money. I accept, I said. The settlement agreement was printed and placed before us. My mother picked up the pen first. Her hand trembled slightly as she signed. There was no lecture about keeping the house afloat, no reminder of sacrifices, no attempt to control the narrative. Just ink on paper. When it was my turn, I signed beneath her name. This was legal revenge without shouting, documentation over emotion, structure over manipulation. As the papers were gathered, my mother finally looked at me. I thought I was protecting this family, she said quietly. Lauren closed her binder. Accountability protects families. Outside the mediation center, the August heat pressed against my skin. The courthouse clock struck the hour. The settlement amount would not erase 18 months of instability. It would not restore interviews that never materialized, but it quantified the damage in numbers that could not be whispered away. $112,000, corrective letters to 11 employers, a written statement to the church board, a binding cease and desist. My mother relied on implication and reputation. I relied on a defamation claim supported by evidence. The money compensated the financial damages. The record restored my name. Chapter 5. Reputation Restored. The first apology came quietly, without drama, almost ordinary. It was late October of 2024 when my phone rang with a number I had once deleted, Diane Keller. For a moment, I watched it vibrate on the table. Then I answered. "Maris, this is Diane from Appalachian Medical Logistics," she said. Her voice carried none of the cautious distance I remembered from 2021. "We received a formal corrective letter regarding the allegation made about you. I want to apologize." I let her finish. "The accusation of theft was false," she continued. "We should have verified before acting. If you were open to it, we would welcome you to reapply. Your qualifications were never the issue." Reputational risk. That phrase had once ended an interview. Now it sounded smaller than it ever had. "I appreciate the call," I said, and I meant it. Over the next few weeks, more confirmations followed. 3 other employers acknowledged receiving written corrections. One offered an interview. Another simply stated they had updated their records. Family defamation had become documented correction. Grace Fellowship's church board sent a formal acknowledgement as well. The letter was brief and procedural. They had received the clarification, the previous allegation had been inaccurate, the matter was closed. No announcement from the pulpit, no dramatic reversal, just paper. In December 2024, I drove past the house on Pine Grove Drive. The lawn looked smaller than I remembered. A real estate sign leaned slightly in the yard. The house sold for $219,000. A neighbor later mentioned that my mother had moved into a 1-bedroom apartment off Riverside Avenue, $1,050 a month. For years, she said every decision was made to protect that house, that mortgage, that stability. Legal accountability had shifted that stability. There was no explosion, no public shaming, just a transfer of weight. In January 2025, my sister Tessa called. "I need to ask you something," she said, her voice thinner than usual. "What is it?" "Did Aunt Claudia ever send money for me?" The question was careful, almost fragile. "I do not know," I answered, "but you should request the records." There was silence on the line. "I asked Mom," she said. "She told me you were twisting things." "Paper does not lie. You deserve documentation," I said. This time she did not defend our mother. She did not accuse me either. It was not reconciliation, it was recognition. In November 2024, I had already made my decision. I packed my car and drove south again, not to investigate, but to begin. Savannah welcomed me without history. I closed on a 2-bedroom condominium near Forsyth Park for $285,000. The down payment came partially from the trust Claudia had established in 2012, not recklessly, not emotionally, strategically. I opened a Roth IRA in my own name the following week. Financial independence does not announce itself, it accumulates in signed documents and automatic transfers. I accepted a compliance position with a healthcare consulting firm in Savannah in early 2025. The onboarding process was routine. Background checks completed without hesitation. No calls questioning my integrity. I was not rebuilding my reputation, I was reclaiming it. One afternoon in February, I walked into a neighborhood grocery store a few blocks from my condo. The automatic doors slid open with a soft hum. No one stared, no one whispered. I picked up a basket and moved through the aisles unnoticed, just another woman comparing produce prices after work. For 3 years in Knoxville, I had felt watched, measured, reduced to a rumor shaped by someone who shared my last name. In Savannah, I was anonymous in the best possible way. At the checkout counter, the cashier smiled. "Did you find everything you needed?" "I did," I said. The answer felt larger than groceries. The settlement funds sat in a high-yield savings account. The trust continued to grow in index funds and municipal bonds. My Roth IRA contributions were automated each month. Structure over chaos. My mother and I speak occasionally. The conversations are brief, polite. There is no dramatic apology beyond the ink she placed on the mediation agreement, no attempt to rewrite what happened. Karma did not arrive as spectacle, it arrived as consequence. A house sold, a lease signed, corrective letters filed in employer records, a cease and desist in place. What began as a false accusation ended as legal revenge grounded in documentation. The money compensated the financial damages. The civil settlement restored the public record. But the deeper restoration was internal. For years, I believed being the good daughter meant absorbing silence. Now I understand that quiet strength sometimes means filing the paperwork. As I stepped out of the grocery store into the Savannah sunlight, I paused for a moment. If someone in your own family tried to rewrite your story, if you were labeled with a lie that cost you work, dignity, or opportunity, and you finally held proof in your hands, would you stay silent, or would you document everything and let the record speak?